I'll call the regular meeting of the Newport Beach City Council for September 8th, 2009 to order. Can we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present except for Councilmember Rosansky, who has an excused absence.
Okay. Do we have a closed session report from the City Attorney's Office?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do. The council met in closed session to discuss the matters that are delineated on the closed session agenda. On the main agenda, there was an announcement out as to two different matters. As to conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Harvey versus City of Newport Beach, the council met in closed session to consider and did approve the settlement of that matter. Both the Superior Court and the appellate litigation has been resolved pursuant to written settlement agreement. The city's public information manager has details regarding that settlement. The council went on to take action with respect to SAVE, Irreplaceable Landforms Coalition versus City of Newport Beach, which is the area development. The council authorized the defense of that matter through the tender to the applicant in the Aries project and the joint defense of the city along with the Office of the City Attorney. Both of these motions were passed unanimously by the sitting council members present.
Okay, thank you. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Henn, followed by the invocation by Reverend Robert Jordan Ross.
Please join me in our pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Reverend Ross here. Councilman Witt, would you want to do an impromptu invocation for us?
Very short one. Please look over the proceedings of this meeting tonight and have us make fair decisions. And those who are here to be honored, please look over them for the wonderful things that they have done. I think that we have an exceptional city, and I think all, I hope that we will continue to be the city that we are.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman Woods. Sorry to put you on the spot like that. Very well done. Okay, we have some presentations this evening. The first one is the Life Saving Award presentation. Chief Lewis, are you going to be doing that? Okay.
I'm gonna have Kevin Byrne and Steve Covey come forward, please. And Station 2. Oh, Sean Levin, City of Newport Beach Recreation and Senior Services Department. And Station 2, please come on up. On July 9th, we had some quick work that resulted in the saving of a life during our adult basketball program. One of the players had dropped in full cardiac arrest, and these two gentlemen are firefighters, one in the city of Long Beach and one for Orange County Fire. And that's good for the player on this team because they were able to resuscitate him and keep him going until Station 2 with quick response came and was able to use a defibrillator to get him going again. He is alive and fine today thanks to their efforts, so we're very thankful. We're glad that they were at the program that night and able to do that, and also for our fire department with the quick response. So thanks to all their efforts, this gentleman is alive today, and we thank them for that. And we also have anonymous donors who are donating some money to get automatic defibrillators for each of our gyms, which we're purchasing at this time. So in the future, our staff, if something happens, will be able to give a shock right away. The new machines are great. They're quick. They're easy. Anybody can use them. It kind of walks you through. So we're happy for that. But let's give all these guys a great round of applause for their efforts. Dave, come on. This is Dave, the guy that survived.
Okay, our next presentation is a presentation of the Insurance Services Office, the ISO Award. Is there someone from ISO here?
Yes.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. We're here to...
Could you state your name for us so we know who
my
you are?
name is Ralph Dorio. I'm from Washington Township, Warren County, New Jersey. I represent ISO in the home office in Jersey City, New Jersey, and we're here tonight to present one of the very few, in 15 years we've been doing building code evaluations, and this is about the 7th Class 1 presentation that we've had to make, that we've been able to make in that time. So it's not an easy achievement to become a Class 1 community. It shows the commitment of the community towards building code enforcement and the professionalism of the department. The challenge for this organization and this community is to maintain it. We have not had one community maintain the Class 1 evaluation since we've been doing them. So it's an honor for me to be here tonight to present this award to an outstanding building code enforcement department and a community that supports them, that allows them to make this achievement.
Thank you.
What do we have to do to maintain it, since nobody has?
It's going to be real tricky. I appreciate this. I want to thank Mr. Dario, but mostly I want to thank the community and City Manager Bludow and you, council members, for your support. Without this, without the resources that the department has that you provided us, we could not have accomplished this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, our next award is a presentation, I should say, is a proclamation recognizing International Literacy Day. And this is a proclamation of the City of Newport Beach, whereas the need for a highly literate society, or citizenry, I should say, is necessary as Newport Beach moves toward an increasingly challenging future, and approximately 10% of the residents of Newport Beach and many of the adults employed by businesses within the city are lacking the literacy skills necessary to meet these challenges, and lack of literacy skills impacts not only their lives and the lives of their families, but their ability to work productively and their full participation as citizens, residents, and employees of our city. And the Newport Beach Public Library Literary Services works with adults seeking to improve their literacy skills to enable them to achieve success in their lives at home, at work, and in the community. And the Newport Beach Public Library Literacy Services hosts an annual International Literacy Day event to highlight the importance of literacy in society and the great strides that program participants have made. Now, therefore, I, Edward Selich, Mayor of Newport Beach, on behalf of the entire Newport Beach City Council, do hereby proclaim September 10th, 2009 as International Literacy Day in the city of Newport Beach, and urge my fellow citizens to learn more about the importance of literacy and to become involved with literacy in the community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Newport Beach to be affixed this 8th day of September 2009.
That was very well read, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Selich, members of the council, Newport Beach residents, I'm Carolyn Shearer, President of the Advisory Board of the Literacy Program at the library, and I would like to thank you very much for the honor that you bestowed on us in recognizing International Literacy Day. This is my favorite day in the year of the program because we celebrate our learners and their accomplishments, and we give learners a Learner Achievement Award to the learner who's achieved the most in the past calendar year. I know that Mayor Selich will be joining us on the program this year, and other members of council and Mr. Blau have been there in the future. So again, thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the library for support and recognize Cynthia Powell, the Library Services Director, and Melissa Kelly, the Administrative Services Manager, who's been a great help to us. And last but not least, if you could come on Thursday at 10 o'clock, it's really a lovely day. We've been invited to the council, and we'd be delighted to see you. And thank you again.
Thank you. I have to say that I was at the program last year, and it was certainly a most inspiring program to see the hard work that all the volunteers do to help people that want to improve their literacy skills, and actually hear the stories of some of the folks that go through the program and what it means to them and what it's meant to their lives. So if you do have the opportunity to be there on Thursday, it's certainly worthwhile. Okay, our last presentation. This is a proclamation for our outgoing city manager, Homer Bludow. It gives me great pleasure to read this, Homer. I'll just get into it. This is a proclamation of the city of Newport Beach, whereas Homer L. Bludow, I never knew that your middle initial was L, learn something every day, began his first career as the city manager, or began his career as the city manager of the city of Newport Beach in May 1999, and will complete his dedicated service with the city of Newport Beach on September the 11th, 2009. And he has been a city manager in California since 1980, serving in the cities of Avenal, you pick the big cities, don't you? Rialto, Coronado, and Newport Beach. And his tenure in Newport Beach is marked by a host of accomplishments and milestones that will have a lasting impact on the city, including the adoption of the city's organizational values, the negotiation of the extension to the John Wayne Airport Settlement Agreement, annexion of Newport Coast and Santa Ana Heights, development of Bonita Canyon Sports Park and Coastal Peak Park, the approval of the reuse of Marina Park, the development of detailed facilities replacement plan, and the planning for a new civic center. And in addition to his professional duties, he has been an active leader in the community, serving in many community activities, the following being just a few. Twice served as co-chair for Relay for Life, played an integral role in forming and serving on the 1-1 Marines Adoption Committee, being a Commodore with the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and serving as director of the Environmental Nature Center. And he has worked with 3 city attorneys, 2 city clerks, survived 11 mayors, and 18 council members. He has attended 264 city council meetings and many various other public meetings during his career at the city of Newport Beach. And over the past 10 years, he has become highly respected and admired by management and staff alike for his strong leadership, dedication to values, his great sense of humor, his friendship, and his uplifting optimism. And he has served the city of Newport Beach and its citizens in an exemplary manner with distinction and in the highest standards of the city of Newport Beach. And Homer and his wife Janet intend to remain city residents and will continue to enjoy wedded bliss and Tuesday evenings free of attending city council meetings twice a month. Now, therefore, I, Edward Selich, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, do hereby proclaim that the following special recognition be given to Homer L. Bludow, commendation for a career of outstanding service, for 10 years of meritorious service to the community as the 7th city manager of the city of Newport Beach. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Newport Beach to be affixed this 10th day of September 2009.
I don't get this one, I'm really going to get it. All right, here we go, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Just because I've got it, it's not going to bother.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to stand up here because I would like to address the council and the city council by standing. Thank you very much. That is beautifully worded, and I think anyone would, love to be in my shoes in order to hear such words of praise. You know, the thought occurred to me only 30 minutes ago that 10 years and 6 months to this day, and almost to this exact minute, I was standing at this microphone being introduced as the city manager at Newport Beach. It was March the 8th of 1999. And I'll never forget that day because it was my birthday. And I got introduced as the city manager on March the 8th of my birthday. And what a great birthday present that was. I stand here and I can't believe that I have been city manager of this wonderful community for about 10% of the time that it has been incorporated. And putting it that way, 10 years and a little bit after over 100 years. But those 10 years have been such full and rich and rewarding time for me, both professionally and personally. I just am so thankful that I got to work for this city council and the other city council members, 18 city council members in all over the last 10 years. I've been treated very well by the city council, by all of staff, and by the community. I couldn't ask for a better 10 years to end my career as a city manager in California. I feel very blessed. I found my wife here, which means that Newport Beach will always be the most special city in my life. So thank you very much for these kind words. I will try and not trip and fall during this council meeting, which is my last one, but I appreciate the proclamation and the sincerity behind it very much. Thank you.
Well, I first met Homer, I think it was probably the second or third day on his job. He probably doesn't even remember this, but I was on the planning commission at the time, and we were at some committee meeting, can't remember what it was, in the council chambers here, and he came in and introduced himself, and I immediately had a very positive impression because you were so outgoing and friendly, and just seemed like a really nice guy. And over the years, during my term on the Planning Commission and now my term on the City Council, I've gotten to know you better, particularly over the last 2 years serving as mayor. And I have, seen more closely than I ever saw your dedication to duty, your honesty, your integrity, the way that you carry yourself, the respect that the staff has of you, and the inspiration that you give to your staff. And I'm happy that you're going on to retirement, but I can tell you that personally, I will really miss you, and I appreciate having the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you.
Councilman Webb?
Yeah, I have the unique experience of both working for Homer and having him work for me as a city council member, and it doesn't happen that way very often. I can remember, as you talk about the first time you met him, and I don't know that it was necessarily the first time, but the first staff meeting he had where he brought us into this table over here, and he said, well, I think that you need to really get to know me a little bit better, and I want to let you know that I'm from Texas, and I got a few things to say. And he pulls out this book, and he starts reading Texas Redneck redneck jokes. And, yeah, he kind of portrayed that. I got even with him, though, at the Employees Award banquet, which was about 2 weeks later, and I presented him with a Cat in the Hat hat, as we are both graduates from the University of Arizona, and that's the Wildcats, and so we had to make sure that was known. But he was a great boss for me to work for, and I really enjoyed the experiences and working with him and his way of letting a department head do the job that he was supposed to do. As a city council member, it's been also a wonderful experience to seek counsel and offer comments and from a different standpoint. And I know that Homer has, in my opinion, really expressed a strong desire to make sure that the city is done. I mean, that the city does what is right, and I think that he has worked very hard in accomplishing that. And I know that sometimes it's been somewhat difficult. Some council members have been maybe not quite as easy to work with as others, but all in all, I think that we as council members have done a pretty good job of sticking together and supporting the things that have done. Now, unfortunately, it's a little bit unprepared, but Homer, on your way out, and you're here until Friday, I want to make sure that you're prepared for retirement, so I'll be giving you a straw hat. And since you're in my neighborhood, and the position is up for grabs at the next election, I think that maybe we ought to need to call you Walking Homer. And we'll pursue that a little bit further. I know you haven't agreed to that, and I know Janet hasn't agreed. But by the way, Janet, you do have our permission to unplug the television on Tuesday nights.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
Well, it's been my pleasure to actually have known Homer from his time when he was in Coronado. And because of that, I know that Homer's spent much of his career in two of the crappiest city halls in all of California. But just like in Coronado, where he laid the groundwork for a city hall that the community today is very, very proud of, it's just a beautiful spot on the water, he's done the same thing here. And the city hall that's going to rise in Newport Beach, I think, will be a tribute, Homer, to your leadership and your legacy of leadership here in Newport Beach. You know, when you look at Coronado, when you look here at Newport Beach, you see excellence, you see public value, you see the creation of things that will endure far beyond the time that Homer is here and all of us are here. And that's the real mark of leadership. And I think, Homer, I can think of no more fitting testimonial than the 80+% public satisfaction in the survey that we did a year and a half ago. And I think that is really the citizens of this community saying thank you for a job well done. And I know all of us on the City Council join the community in saying the very same thing and wishing you all the best as you go forward.
Councilman Henn.
Homer, if you had tripped on your way back to the seat there, there's not a person in this room that wouldn't have rushed to save you from a fall.
Maybe Janet.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
She didn't want to take care of it if you get injured.
You were the right man at the right time to take the helm of this city, and you've done a tremendous job over the past 10 years, a great record of achievement. Leadership, not just with city staff, but leadership in the community, which I've always appreciated. You've been very present and involved and out there amongst the citizens of Newport Beach, and I know that's really tremendously appreciated as well. You've got a great record of accomplishment here, and we'll look forward to serving you as a citizen of Newport Beach for a long time. Congratulations and the very best to you. Thanks.
Councilman Daigle.
Yes, I first want to talk about what you do for our citizens and managing all the day-to-day operations to our city. I want to thank you for that. I mean, our city runs like clockwork. Things are very well taken care of. You know, you call 911, you get a response. Things are well maintained. The garbage gets picked up on time, although because of the holiday on Monday, we're going to be a day late this week. And In addition to the day-to-day operations, you support all of the priorities of the City Council. And as citizens elected by our fellow citizens, I want to thank you for supporting our priorities. And in terms of myself personally, we got to know each other through the Citizens Aviation Committee. And you've developed very close rapport with our community groups, and that's really something to be proud of and a tremendous accomplishment. And that you've also been able to address this airport issue in the kind of careful and methodical and strategic way that it needs to be carried out. And I thank you for that. And it's clearly a high-stakes issue, and you have served us all so well with that. Additionally, with all the communication in this world and all the newfangled Twitter and Facebook, I haven't seen anything yet that beats your city manager's newsletter. And that is such a nice touch to our community. People love it. They connect with it. And in terms of what we're here to do in government, for you to continue to report the progress of our city to citizens is really appreciated. So good luck with your retirement. I'm sure I'll see you around town.
Councilwoman Gartner?
I remember seeing Homer at a lot of meetings that I would come to, and this was sort of a avuncular presence, always very measured speaking, calm. And I was shortly on council when I went to my first employee breakfast, and there was Homer in a white leather jumpsuit a la Elvis with the cape. And I went, okay, there's another side to him that I hadn't expected. We saw that a lot. I think this was, in many ways, a very fractious city before you came. I think there were all sorts of divisions within the city staff, outside, and you have done so much. This is a family now. I mean, I know people that work here. That I've known a couple of people since I knew their mothers. You know, when I'd known them since childhood, and so I get this thing circular. I get the real story, and just how happy they are when they've gotten a job here and they become part of a family, and that's a unique talent. What I particularly appreciate, though, is as a council person asking you for advice, and you would always give me measured, candid advice. And of course, if I disregarded it and everything blew up in my face, you didn't say, I told you so. You simply worked to make it better again. So I really appreciate that, because you always did your best for the city, and we see it every day. And Dave, you got some big shoes to fill. Have fun.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. I just thank you very much for the proclamation and for the kind words. I'm a very fortunate man.
Okay, thank you, Homer. Madam Clerk?
Notice to the public. The city provides yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones and pagers off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for the City Council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Okay, Councilman Daigle.
Yes, I attended the passing of the command at the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Narwhal in Newport Harbor. And Lieutenant Chris Hensley has been commander for a 2-year assignment. He asked Washington for a 3rd year, and they said, everyone wants a 3rd year at Newport Harbor, but sorry. So he's headed to Washington, D.C. to work in legislative affairs, and I anticipate that we're going to keep in touch with him, and hopefully down the line he'll be able to help us, given that one of the justifications for federal funding is the presence of our U.S. Coast Guard station. And certainly also appreciate the presence of the Coast Guard. And I was hearing on the radio that during Katrina, which is kind of heralded as a government incompetency in terms of the response, the GAO, which is the Government Accounting Office, really praised the Coast Guard for their remarkable response to Katrina. They rescued over 35,000 people from rooftops. And part of that is attributed to the very independent and responsive culture of the Coast Guard. And they said it's not unusual for an enlisted man to be commanding a 47-foot boat in a 50-foot swell. So the way that they go about their business is to be commended, and we certainly appreciate that they're here in Newport Harbor to help all of our voters. So thank you.
Councilman Gardner?
Desalination is a topic of great interest, and this Thursday at 3 o'clock in the fire conference room, the Coastal Bay Water Quality Committee will be having a presentation on the Poseidon desal plan. This is the one that's proposed for Huntington Beach. Secondly, I would like to ask my fellow council members to not object to the establishment of a, for lack of a better term, bicycle task force. I think we can do a lot to improve the safety of bicycling in the city as well as expanding opportunities. And so if there are no objections, I'd like staff to come back. This would be, as I see it, a task force with a short lifespan, just as the Green Building Task Force is, made up of residents and any council member that would like to join me. So if there are no objections, could you have that on the next agenda? Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Webb?
We'll discuss it later. I have none.
Okay. Councilman Webb is the father of the bicycle trail plan. Councilman Henn?
I have nothing.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, it's been a long time since we've actually been together, so just to report on a couple of quick things. Along with Councilmember Gardner, I was privileged to attend the Corona Del Mar Residents Association Preparedness Expo on August 19th. They had a great turnout, and our police and fire department were there in force to talk about how you can make your home safer in the case of an emergency and to promote our great CERT program, and I want to think everybody did a great job with that. I want to thank the Arts Commission for another great summer of our summer concert series, which ended August 23rd in Bonita Canyon Park. Several hundred residents were out to enjoy the music in the park that evening. And I was privileged on the 31st of August to represent the city for the opening of the Pretend City Children's Museum in the city of Irvine. This is a great museum designed for young kids where they can come in and have an opportunity to be in a city that's sort of child-sized. They can grow food and take it to the store and sell it, and then go through the market and buy it and take it to the restaurant and see it cooked and learn what it feels like to be a policeman or watch something, fall in the trash can and go out to the beach through the sewer line and really learn what it is to be, what a city is all about. So if you have kids or grandkids, it's in the Irvine Spectrum, and I heartily recommend it. It's sort of like a pretend city, but I was at a hearing last week on California's future to talk about our fiscal situation. It's similarly childlike. But clearly the legislature has failed to come up with permanent answers. One statistic that I think is just stunning, though, that did come out of this meeting, there's 140,000 Californians who pay 50% of all the taxes. I think we ought to give them a ban like we do endangered birds because they keep leaving the state, and every time one of them leaves, we notice it in the state, and we need to have some real fiscal and structural reform to get over that. And then finally, on a more positive note, I was very pleased to attend USC's opening football game on Saturday to see Newport Beach's own Matt Barkley take the field as an 18-year-old freshman quarterback. Matt is a graduate of Mariners Christian School and Modern Day High School. He led the Trojans to a 56-3 victory, and I understand it's his birthday tomorrow. So I know everybody in the city joins me in wishing him a happy birthday and best of luck against Ohio State this weekend coming up.
You think the UCLA grads do?
Well,
All right. Okay, I have no announcements this evening. Madam Clerk?
Consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 19, are considered by the council to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The city council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion unless members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Thank you. Councilman Henn?
I have nothing.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
no items?
Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, item 14, given the level of interest by our citizens in traffic flow at Avocado and San Miguel, the city is intending to carry out some improvements there, so I'd appreciate if the Public Works Director at the appropriate time will share with us kind of an overview of those improvements.
Okay. Councilman Gardner?
Nothing, but I abstain on item number 1.
Okay. Okay, and I have no items to pull. Does staff have anything to pull?
Nothing to pull.
Does anyone from the public want to pull an item from the agenda?
Sorry, I need to abstain on one as well.
You abstain on one, too? Okay, sorry. Okay, anyone from the public want to pull any item from the calendar? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back for motion.
I move the approval of the consent calendar, items 1 through 19, pulling items 14, Councilmembers Gardner and Daigle abstaining on item 1.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, the only item pulled is item number 14, the Newport Beach Civic Center project, approval of amendment number 1 to professional services agreement with RBF Consulting for traffic engineering services. Mr. Badum?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, this item before you tonight is an amendment to an original contract with RBF Consulting that we had hired them to do traffic engineering services in connection with the Newport Beach Civic Center project. What this amendment includes are moving forward on the actual design and producing of construction plans and specifications for the additional left turn, which would be, I guess, the eastbound left turn off of San Miguel onto MacArthur Boulevard, which involves the modification of the modification of the intersection at Avocado. Also included in this contract is the design and of plans and specifications for the entryway at Farallon and Avocado, which will be the new future entrance to the City Hall complex, the Civic Center complex, and also some design work involved along the frontage on Avocado of what we hope to be the dog park on the north parcel, north of San Miguel. These improvements are ones that we want to get going in advance of the project. They're also included in the project EIR. We're trying to get that design going so that it can be the first order of work, so these improvements will be in place before there are any impacts, and this will help mitigate any impacts that might occur during construction as well. And as Councilmember Henn mentioned this afternoon, I also wanted to state that this project does not include any of some of the more creative traffic circulation improvements that we did talk about some months back regarding the trying to improve the general overall traffic circulation in that area. These are just be for the immediate ones that we're aware of right now, which are the additional turn lane as well as the new intersection. We're still working on those conceptual ideas. There are still plans in the works that are essentially attached to the original portion of this contract, which are they're looking at additional traffic signals and turn lanes at locations such as San Miguel and Newport Center Drive. We're also looking at the Anacapa intersection and Newport Center Drive, and we're also looking at the possibility of restricting turn movements. But those will be a separate action and a separate project at some point in the future, which are really not connected completely into the City Hall project at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No,
Councilman Daigle?
thank you. And if you can just restate where the left-hand turn's going?
The left hand, there will be a third left turn lane eastbound San Miguel to northbound MacArthur Boulevard.
Okay, so as you're leaving Fashion Island and want to get on MacArthur?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I move the recommended action.
Second.
Anyone from the public want to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is the oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilman Henn?
I have none.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
None?
Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, the council selected me to go up to the annual League of California Cities in San Jose next week. And I just wanted to let everyone know a couple things. Terry Cassidy, our HR director, has been in a leadership role. She's on some policy committees and helping out with panels. And really, these panels address the issues of the day, such as labor negotiations during turbulent economic times. And as part of my responsibilities is to cast a vote as a voting delegate. And so there's 2 resolutions that I went over with the city manager. One is on social host liability, and the police chief's opinion is that we should not support that. And then the second one is on foreclosure prevention, if we should sort of get involved with any of that. And we're also going to be opposing that resolution as well. So if you need any additional information on the resolutions, let me know. But those would be the votes that I'll be casting.
Okay. Councilwoman Gardner?
Nothing.
Councilman Webb? And I have nothing to report this evening. Okay, our first public hearing tonight is the annual review of Fletcher Jones Development Agreement. It's item number 20.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For Noweno Planning Department, the development agreement number 9 was approved in 1995. Fletcher Jones Motor Cars has been operating since 1997. The last annual review was in 1999, and the council at that time found them in compliance with the development agreement except for 2 conditions, and those 2 conditions have been met. So if the council should choose to agree with staff's recommendation, there should be a motion and a second and a vote to find Fletcher Jones Motor Cars in good faith compliance with development agreement number 9.
Okay. Any questions? Councilwoman
The
Gardner?
last one we did was, like this, was Hogue. Now, is there some reason why we review annual reviews every 10 years?
I'm not really sure about that. We started to do it in 2004, and I'm not sure why it wasn't done. But there were only 2 conditions that hadn't been met, and now they have done most of them, so I'm not even sure if we need to do this.
Well,
review
I just
every year.
found this was difficult because when we did the Hogue review, I mean, obviously there were a lot more issues with the Hogue annual review, but we had the development agreement. And I'm looking here and it's saying development agreement number 9, items 1, da-da-da-da-da, I don't even know what they are. It makes it a little hard to evaluate this. So can you explain again what the 2 issues are that we are?
Yes, I apologize. I didn't give that as an attachment, but because there was only 2 items left over from the last one, I just mentioned them in the report, and then Fletcher Jones had them in their status report. One condition was for the Bayview Drive extension about funding, and all of those payments have been made since then. I believe 2004, 2005, the last payment was made. And the second issue was about lighting, and Fletcher Jones did provide a landscaping plan to plant trees along the street of Bayview to protect everyone on the other side of Bayview from their lighting, because there were issues in 1999 about
And those have
lighting.
both been done?
Yes.
All right. This is just while we're talking about Fletcher Jones. We all received a letter dated August 10th about Fletcher Jones taking the liberty of painting on the road to block access to the Irvine Coast Nature Trail. Did anybody respond to this? Do you know, Mr. City Manager? Dave?
I was made aware of that by Assistant City Manager Sharon Wood last week, and she has spoken to the managers at Fletcher Jones Motor Cars and will be responding appropriately to the sender of that letter.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, does anyone from the public want to comment on this item?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission. I'm Carol McDermott. I'm representing Fletcher Jones, and we're very happy that we've completed all the requirements of the development agreement. We also became aware of that letter, and as far as Fletcher Jones is concerned, there's never been any restriction on the access to that trail. However, we do want to clarify that and are beginning our work again with regard to Bayview issues, and a meeting has been set in order to further resolve those, which I think might help the issue that was raised in the letter that was sent. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your acceptance of the staff report. And congratulations, Homer. We're going to miss you.
Carol, I think Mayor Pro Tem Curry has a question.
Nope.
No?
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, I'll bring it back to council.
I'd move the recommended action, find them in good faith compliance.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, our second public hearing this evening is item 21, the Cost Recovery Ordinance, Chapter 3.36, Fee Resolution and Master Fee Schedule.
Glenn Evero, the revenue manager, is going to walk council through the actions of this item.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. There are two elements that drive the establishment of fees. One is the fee study that identifies what the city's costs are for services for which fees are imposed, and the Newport Beach Municipal Code Chapter 3.36, which identifies for each fee, for each service for which a fee is imposed, the percentage of recovery that we are directed to capture in the master fee schedule. A year ago, we presented to council the findings of the consultant in the cost of services study and introduced a revised Chapter 3.36 that identified the percentage recoveries. Council's action last year directed us to do a phasing in of some of the fees that we have. There were three different kinds of phasings that occurred. Here, a year later, we're now ready to increase or adjust the fees by the change in the cost of doing business as measured by the CPI, since the costs that were used by the consultant in the 2008 study. So we've applied the phasing schedules that we were directed by council last year to impose. We have added a cost of living adjustment of 2.97% to those services for which fees are imposed that are subject to the CPI, and there are some exceptions to that. And then we've done a number of updates to specific fees. Staff has identified fees, services for which no fees are imposed. We've studied those costs and identified those and added those to the schedule. We've also reduced the fees for some services for which we've become more efficient or otherwise identified a change in the level of services associated with those particular services, and the fee needs to be reduced downward. One of the specific services that we've identified in the Cost Recovery Ordinance 3.36, we're recommending be adjusted and a subsidy of 50% of the actual cost be identified in the Cost Recovery Ordinance. So tonight you have a couple of actions before you. One, to introduce the Cost Recovery Ordinance, which would establish a 50% recovery of costs for the juvenile substance abuse program, and then to adopt the draft resolution with master fee schedule, which incorporates the changes that I've just related. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Gardner?
I noticed something about the dog licenses, and we got an email from someone who was having a very difficult time with the dog license, not getting it after paying, and find out. He said that it was outsourced to Texas, and I know that the last time I paid for my dog license, I sent it in the mail. I never got anything in response. So I'm thinking that this is an area, even if we may not want to reduce fees if our service is this bad, we may want to increase fees so we can do it better. I'll be glad to talk to you later about this, but I just wanted to bring this up, that we are seeming to have a trouble in that area.
I might suggest that we recently did this outsourcing 3 weeks ago. So if it was within the last month, I would suggest that there was some challenge in making this transition happen. But we're through that conversion, and we think that this September billing will have cleared up most of the problems that we've had with the renewals of those dog licenses.
All right, good. Good to hear. Thank you.
Well, I hope this new outsource, the one complaint that I got on the dog licenses was that the piece of metal that they were made out of that you hang around the neck, the dog was able to chew it up, and they had to come and get a new one. So could you make more durable dog licenses?
Well, you know, we get conflicting signals from our customers in that regard. Some of them think that the heavier the metal, you know, the more damage to the dog's spinal cord, and we have to be careful of that. So we'll take that into consideration.
Okay.
Hopefully,
if you've got a chewer, he can chew it through anything, I'm sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Lynn, is our solar system code compliance fee, is that a new fee, or is that an amendment to an existing fee?
that is a new fee that building department has advised us of.
As you know, I think the city received a letter, I believe, from the Sierra Club, who has reviewed, I think, solar installation fees in cities throughout California to determine whether or not they are a detriment to people moving to residential solar. And there's a lot of incentives for people to do that. We want to encourage people to do that. That's a good thing. Do you know where this fee sits relative to some of our neighboring communities?
I'm sorry, Councilman, I don't know specifically. This was provided to us by the building department, and with their recommendation, we added it to the schedule. I didn't inquire about Sierra Club communications with regard to that particular service.
Yeah, I looked at this, and I just thought $130 in comparison to what any kind of solar system costs. I don't think this is onerous, even if it is a little higher than some other cities. I mean, it's not. If it were $1,000 or $900, that would be a discouraging thing. But I can't imagine anybody not doing a system because there's a $130 fee.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that.
Yeah, I did remember that it seemed like we were in about 60 percentile, but there were a number of cities that were much higher than we were.
Councilman Hen, did you? Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Does anyone from the audience want to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for motion.
Move the action.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Madam Clerk?
Public comments. Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Okay, does anyone wish to address the council on item not on the agenda? Step forward and state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Irene Mepig. I am a health educator for community service programs. We focus on providing education and awareness on alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. I'm here today to inform you about our prescription and over-the-counter drug abuse prevention efforts for the city of Newport Beach. The Orange County Healthcare Agency, their alcohol, drug, and education prevention team has charged us to work with the cities of Newport Beach, Orange, Fullerton, and Mission Viejo, and we will be implementing this initiative through promoting awareness and educating youth, parents, and health professionals within the city. We're focused more with group-level settings and are able to offer our services to activities including educational material distribution, offering interactive educational workshops, and we are very interested in assisting the community in promoting for a town hall which will provide information on this emerging drug trend. In front of you is a packet that includes a variety of information. On the right of the green folder, you'll find information in regards to our organization, our funding agent, and the work we are committed to. On the left, in regards to our prescription and over-the-counter drug initiative, as well as some local data derived from the California Healthy Kids Survey, which will be specific to the city's Newport Mesa school districts. It is our hopes that we will be able to work with the city of Newport Beach cohesively to promote awareness of this emerging drug trend. We extend our services as a community resource, and we hope we are able to serve the community by increasing awareness.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close that portion of the agenda. Next item is the Planning Commission agenda for August 20th, 2009.
Mayor and members of City Council, there were 3 public hearings at the August 20th meeting of the Planning Commission. The first one was an appeal of a decision by the zoning administrator on approval on a parcel map. The applicant contested 2 of the conditions applying to the Coastal Commission permit requirement and ingress and egress access easement. This one's been continued for several months. The county, the city, and the applicant are trying to get together to arrange the access easement. That still hasn't happened, so the Planning Commission agreed to the request to continue for another 90 days on that particular application. Second one was the Port Restaurant and Bar at 440 Heliotrope Avenue. That's a request for expansion of activities under the use permit, including live entertainment, longer hours, and the ability to serve to serve lunches. The applicant, after hearing the comments from staff and from members of the audience who were opposed to the application and requested that this be continued to allow him to provide some more information in defense of his application. So that'll be coming back at the next Planning Commission meeting. Lastly, Balboa Inn, 105 Main Street. This was a 6-month report that the Planning Commission had requested when the applicants at Balboa Inn had requested some additional entertainment activities during the summer months and to allow entertainment in the covered courtyard. After reports from the police department and code enforcement, the Planning Commission agreed that, in fact, the Balboa Inn folks were living up to the conditions of the permit and would not require any further review.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Lipo? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's just a receive and file item. So we'll move on to current business. Item 23, City Council acceptance of the final report from ICMA Consultants regarding the establishment of performance measures and benchmarks in order to continuously improve as an organization.
Gary Rapp from ICMA is going to provide an overview, and Brooke Myrie is also in the audience. I provided a brief staff report just talking about where we've been over the last year and a half, but Craig might want to elaborate on that.
Mr. Mayor, members, thank you. It's been a long and winding road. I was just thinking about the fact that I think it was almost a year ago tonight that I was here, and you adopted a lot of the preliminaries that we had worked about 6 months to achieve. And it's been a year since we've put the staff to the test, and I'm actually happy to be here before Homer left so I could thank him personally for all the hard work that he's done to lead the staff in this effort. You have a dedicated group of people who worked very hard to put this together, a core team of 4 people, and a lot of facilitators. I won't go through the names, but they're in the report. The thing I'd like to do, though, briefly, is talk about the process that we used and then take a few questions, or as many questions as you have. As the report indicates, you've spent a lot of time thinking about how to compare your services to others, and we created a set of peer cities. We looked at 30 service areas, excuse me, and we put together 34 benchmarks. In addition to that, we put together, we meaning your staff, put together over 100 performance measures that they will be tracking. All told, this adds up to a significant commitment to performance excellence. And just by way of comparison, there are not that many communities. There aren't any that I know of that took on an initiative of this size and scope first time out of the blocks. We have over 200 cities and counties across the country that report to us and that we work with on a regular basis. None of them initiated a project of this scope right out from the get-go. So you're to be commended for that. I think one of the things that we realized about a year into the project, and just slightly after I was here a year ago, is that this was an almost overwhelming task for your staff. We took a little break, about a 3-month break, so everyone could get reoriented, but we've pushed on, and you now have a document in front of you that I think will assist you in reaching significant levels of performance excellence as time goes forward. You have a different way of understanding your organization. You have a different way of comparing yourself to others. But more importantly, you have the basis for asking more questions about what good performance is. I've said repeatedly, and I think I said that in front of you in the past, this is not an audit. We did not come here and audit your organization for the purpose of saying you're good, bad, or indifferent. You have information that tends to portray you in certain ways, but it's our hope that you'll take this information and you'll begin to ask questions about, well, if this is the information that we have and this is how we compare, what does that mean? Why would X, Y, or Z city do it better, do it worse, do it differently? Once you do that and once your staff probes those areas, it'll provide the basis for taking your services to the next level or to improve them. This is all about continuous improvement. That has been the goal from the beginning. We know from what you've asked us to undertake that that's what your commitment has been. We like to say that we are teaching people to fish. I'll be leaving after tonight's presentation. Your staff will have this information. You will have this information, and you'll have to do something with it. We will also leave behind a large curriculum that can be used on a continuous and ongoing basis. New employees coming into the organization will be able to be trained in this system. Your managers and you hopefully will have a dialogue about what direction your organization is going and why it's going in that direction. Frankly, this, in our judgment, will leave you with some fundamentals that if you choose to build on them, will serve you well into the future. A couple of the things that we observed, and they are found on pages 37 and 38 of the report. The one thing that I'd want to observe to you as long as I'm here tonight is that this, I would hope, would create opportunities for dialogue between the City Council and your senior staff, both in terms of how we're going to use this data, what it means, and what kinds of directions do you want to take the community. Fundamentally, cities that use performance measurement are those kinds of cities that have a firm direction, have a vision, have a set of strategic objectives they're trying to achieve. And they use this information in the service of that. We did observe that you have a somewhat lean analytical capability. Having a capability to analyze this data and work with it is important. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you add staff, but you are fairly lean in that area. I think each department needs to have a commitment, and at least someone in each department should be responsible for the maintenance of this information, should you desire to do that as you go forward. In our recommendations, we are strongly recommending that you continue this effort, not just because I was involved with it or I take any pride in it, but mostly because you've spent so much time and effort and your staff has made this monumental commitment. We think that you're right on the verge of being able to take it to the next level. I was just reading something from the city of Austin, Texas, which is considered one of the leading lights in this arena, particularly for large cities. And they say right in their manual for doing performance measurement that they felt that it would take them 6 years to get to a level where they were thoroughly, across the entire organization, immersed in this, doing it the right way, and making total and complete use of this information. No, I'm not suggesting that it's going to take you 6 years. In fact, you're already having a lot of success with information that's already been uncovered. We know a lot of anecdotal situations that have been reported to us. But what I would say is it will take a number of years, and you will refine things, you will learn things, you will head in different directions, you will abandon measures, you will add new measures. Things will change, but that'll be for positive benefit in your organization. We also think that if you commit to regular practice of strategic and business planning linked to your annual budget, that you will also benefit from this or take more complete use of the documentation that's provided within your performance measurement system. Again, best practice in this area is to do regular multi-year strategic planning that's linked with an annual business plan and budget. This will support that. We think that taking that next step is the logical continuation of this project. We also think the fact that you've done surveys, community surveys, business surveys, is a good practice, and we strongly recommend that you continue to do that. Many of these measures, both in the benchmarking area and in the performance measures, are anchored to surveys, and it's a good way of understanding what your citizen requirements are, your customer requirements are, and how well you're doing in their eyes. So we strongly recommend that. We'd also recommend that you conduct regular employee surveys. It's important to understand what's going on in the culture in your organization, certainly, but also because they're internal customers of your services. And again, it's another way of understanding how you're doing. And then finally, we've recommended that in addition to some of the other planning and operational things that we've recommended, we think that a 5-year CIP, adopting something like that, particularly considering capital planning and capital project monitoring was such an important priority, is something that you should embark on as well. As I mentioned, and the report reflects, we've got 34 benchmarks, 28 of them have information. 6 of them were included without information because we believe that you should start your own benchmarking activities locally. You have over 100 other performance measures that relate to trending of internal operations. I'd be very happy, along with Brooke Myrie, my colleague, to answer any questions you'd have about the information that we've presented tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilman Henn?
I'm going to have a few questions and several comments, and so what I thought I would do is defer to the rest of council, and then perhaps you can come back to me.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, first of all, I want to commend our consultants, and I particularly want to commend the city staff who have been involved in this project now for while we've been doing it. It's axiomatic that you can't manage what you can't measure. And if we've learned anything at all in this economic downturn, it's that good organizations can deteriorate very quickly. The rate of change and acceleration is now much faster than it ever was, which is why it is so important for good organizations to continue to strive to improve and to do better. And it's also important for us to answer the question for the taxpayers of this city, compared to what? When we say we have good services, that has no meaning unless you say compared to what. And I think what we are beginning to have the tools to do is to say compared to how we did last year or the year before or 5 years ago, and also to have the ability to say to how we do compared to other communities with similar demographics and similar challenges to those that face us in Newport Beach. And I think those are critically important answers to ensuring that the taxpayers are getting value for money spent. I found some of the information to be fascinating, frankly. I mean, you know, we invest heavily in public safety, but the results that we get in Newport Beach in terms of response times and crimes cleared and the ability to put fires out quickly is impressive. And I think this exercise helps put that in context so that the taxpayers and residents of the city understand that. We've moved methodically on this. This has come before the Finance Committee on several occasions, and we have asked questions, and we've sent information back to be more honed and to be more focused. The departments have reacted, and the consultants have responded to those comments, and I think that's all been a very healthy process. I'll defer to Councilmember Henn's comments, but for my part, what I think is the appropriate thing to do to move this to the next step is to, as we have this transition in the city, is to refer this to our new city manager, Dave Kiff, and give Dave the opportunity to take this data and think about how he wants to use this in structuring his management approach to the community, and then come back to us with a specific approach that incorporates that going forward. So I think that's the direction that I would support, but I would welcome the comments from my colleagues.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilman Daigle?
This would not have happened without the push of my colleagues on the Finance Committee. And clearly, if not for their perseverance, this would have died on the vine. So they're really to be commended for bringing about this kind of a really major initiative to Newport Beach. My thoughts on it, I think it's important that we measure our performance and that government is held accountable. And I'm reminded of that just in the past few days. A constituent called me, and they were just in a total jam over a permit and getting a plan check, and it was looking like they'd have to do over $100,000 worth of improvements, move their family out, and just undergo a lot of inconvenience. And so I contacted our incoming city manager. He was able to come up with a common sense solution, which I appreciate, as does my constituent. But to me, it also indicates other systems issues, because for every constituent that comes to me with an issue, there's others that feel stranded by the process. And so therefore, we need to have the systems in place and the measurements in place so that there's equal treatment for all of our citizens, and that's an area that our benchmarking really focused on. And so I am very appreciative that we are going down this road, and I support Mayor Pro Tem Curry's direction on it. And then also the other aspect, too, that we've been talking about in the Finance Committee is the third phase and the audits, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are in terms of how that falls into the process, but that was something, at least initially, that we had considered. So I'm very supportive of the effort, and I know it's been a lot of work for the staff to carry out, and appreciate their cooperation in doing so. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilman Henn?
Well, I'd like to commend Homer and staff, especially for the work that was done here. This is a gargantuan effort, it really is, and I know firsthand how hard it can be, especially first time out. And so to the steering committee that made this happen day in and day out, my thanks, as well as our IT department, which requires a lot of support for a project like this. And you've commended them, and I'm just echoing that from the standpoint of council here. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Curry's view that our new city manager is a perfect opportunity to make the handoff. And rather than go through the individual recommendations here, I would like the new city manager, though, to respond point for point on the recommendations that you make, as well as describe for us what the next phase of this project is. There's the ongoing work of continuing the data gathering and the measurement and the refining of what we're doing. But it's that next phase that really is the payoff phase for what we're trying to do here. We have an excellent city, very well run. What we're talking about here is having an even better city, even better run, and setting the bar higher every year as we go. So that's the real point. Just a couple of quick questions and comments here. And you don't need to decide right off or respond right off the bat here, but on page 19 on the plan check review, I was surprised that we couldn't figure out how to use our systems to measure a 30-day response period. I thought we did that. If you have a quick response, fine, but
there's probably no quick response, but
well,
I will tell you that we had a graph in here that attempted to reconcile how others do it with yours, and it got footnoted to death, so we made the decision not to do that and to just say we're going to move ahead and make this happen for the future as opposed to trying to
seems
do
like
that
it
way.
shouldn't require too big an adjustment in our measuring systems to be more compliant
I think
with
the
how
simple,
others look at it.
I'm sorry, I think the simple answer, Councilmember, is that what you do works for you, and it was done in conjunction with your customers, and so that makes sense. Going forward, we will find a way of making sure that what's usable and appropriate for your environment finds measurement compatibility with others so that you can see that in the future.
Okay. On page 25 here, we're talking about human resource expenditures per FTE, and we come fairly low down on the list there. But does that measurement include health and benefits as expenditures per FTE, or is that just the cost of managing our
Apparently
HR
not. No, not health and benefits.
Okay, all right. I'd like to point out just a couple of things. On page 17, I regard this as kind of a good illustrative example here. The purpose of this information is not to point fingers or decide who's doing a good job or a bad job. The purpose of this information is to help us understand what we're doing and act on it to make changes where appropriate. And I'm talking about at the top of page 17 here, where it says City Manager's Office / Code Compliance expenditures per capita. And we're at the top of this chart, having the lowest expenditures per capita amongst the benchmark cities. And I'd say, well, gee, that's good. We're not spending too much money on code enforcement. On the other hand, in the citizen survey we not just completed, that we completed, code enforcement was one of the areas that didn't measure as high in terms of customer satisfaction. So now here we're not spending very much money, but then on the other hand, we're not satisfying our customers to the extent they'd like to be. So maybe we need to think about that. How do we go about code enforcement? Is there a better way, and should more resources be devoted to that? So it's a good example. And there's other examples. Police and fire, as was pointed out a minute ago, do an excellent job in terms of our customer satisfaction. On the other hand, they show up fairly high in terms of cost per capita or whatever. And even when you compare to other California cities that have similar benefits structures. And so maybe there's a way we can still maintain very high levels of customer satisfaction, safety, public safety, and yet be more efficient how we go about it. A question to be explored. So, there's another example in the library where maybe there's an opportunity to bring down the cost of materials we want to supply a lot of materials to our residents. Maybe there's a way to do that through automation that's less expensive. So those are just a few examples of how this information really ought to stimulate deeper exploration and hopefully improvement over time as we get better used to dealing with it. And so the fact that there were a half dozen or so benchmarks that we couldn't find a good benchmark for is not troubling for me at all. 2/3 to 3/4 of our benchmarks, we were able to find comparison cities that were meaningful. And more importantly, on the 100 measures that are sort of tucked away in the appendix of your report here, we'll be gathering that information, and our managers will be using it to manage better over time. So I'm happy to echo Councilmember Curry's challenge to our new city manager to pick up the gauntlet here that has been set down by our outgoing city manager, Homer Bludow, and see if we can take this whole process to another step. I support it now more strongly than ever. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Curry.
Well, I would just offer a motion to receive the report and refer it to the incoming city manager with a request to come back for a report on his recommendations for implementation at an appropriate meeting.
Yes.
Second it?
Okay. Does anyone from the audience want to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back for a vote. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 24, sale of the bonds for Assessment District number 103.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, Assessment District 103 was formed for the specific purpose of undergrounding overhead utilities in the Peninsula Point area. As you know, this district the district formation process is lengthy and arduous, both for the citizens, for the staff, as well as the utility companies. There are many legal and administrative steps that help determine the resident interest in the project boundaries, the ultimate project cost, and the methodology in determining the special benefits. But once all the relevant facts that can be determined at the time are out, that information is communicated back to the residents, and the property owners then again have a decision to proceed with the project or not. It is important to note that the project cannot move forward without a majority vote of those property owners that vote. And in this case, 53% of the residents voted in favor of proceeding. In deference to that vote, council also voted to move forward with the project. Cash collection period was then opened, where property owners that wish to prepay their assessments had the opportunity to come in and pay their entire assessment or any portion thereof. And in this case, over 43% paid in full. This, especially in this economy, is probably likely even sets a Newport with a record in Newport Beach about the number of folks that actually came in and prepaid. At tonight's council meeting, we're asking you to approve two resolutions. The first resolution removes the capitalized interest that was initially built into the assessment, since the county has granted a special permission to make a late addition of the tax roll. The capitalized interest is no longer necessary, so we're first asking council to remove the capitalized interest from the assessment. And then that resolution also recognizes that certain property owners prepaid their assessment in full and confirms the remaining list of unpaid property owners. So the second part simply reduces the assessment for those that have paid in full. The second resolution authorizes staff to make the necessary steps to provide for the sale of the remaining unpaid assessments. It authorizes the form of a number of legal documents necessary to sell bonds, including the preliminary official statement, the disclosure dissemination agreement, and the bond purchase contract. So if these resolutions are approved, the remaining financing steps should play out as follows. We're seeking an S&P rating, which we hope to achieve on this bond issue. We're hoping to get that information back by September 17th. We will print and electronically disseminate the preliminary official statement by September 18th, hoping to pre-price bonds on September 23rd, and hoping to close on October 8th. Based on discussions with our underwriters and as currently contemplated, the assessment district bonds might bear a coupon rate between a range of 1.5% for 1-year maturity, ranging to 4.78% on the 15-year maturity. So these will be tax-exempt limited obligation bonds secured solely by the property itself. Members of the public that may be interested in purchasing these bonds could either contact me. My contact information is on the staff report, or they can contact the underwriters directly. Southwest Securities, Miles Beneke in particular, in Beverly Hills. Their phone number is 323-658-4411. They will take their interest prior to the pricing, see if there's an appropriate amount of bonds to place in reserve for folks residents to make that purchase. They also have committed to putting an ad in the Daily Pilot next week that should run for approximately 3 days. So residents that wish to reinvest in our area are able to do so. We have a number of folks from the financing team here tonight, so if you have any questions about the form or the remaining process, we'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan or the financing team?
Are we paying hourly for the finance team?
No, we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Henn?
So Dan, those rates sound pretty good.
Yes, we're happy. And I'm assuming, and members from Southwest Securities are here, but I'm assuming if they've got it pretty narrowly defined, they probably have orders already in place out
So
there.
I imagine the blended average rate is under 4.5?
I believe it's 4.33.
That's terrific. I mean, we told people when we were going about this that it's probably 5.5. I mean, when we were talking about all of this, and so the residents ought to be happy that the financing cost has come in and where it hasn't yet, but we expect it to, at a pretty attractive rate, in addition to the fact that we're in an environment where construction costs are also as attractive as they are likely to get for a while, and so this one seems to be well-timed and well-executed. So thanks for your help with that, Dan.
Okay, anyone from the public want to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for motion.
I move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, the last item on our agenda tonight's the water utility financial plan and water rate increases.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. George Murdoch, Utilities Director. This evening, what you have before you is the water utility financial plan, and with that does include a water rate increase. Also, as part of the staff report, we included a proposed notice to send out per Proposition 218. This would be the notice that we could actually send to the residents, informing them of the procedures and of the increase. This evening, I've invited Paul Matthews. He's with Red Oak Consulting. This is the firm that we hired in 2008 to come in and do a rate study for the utility water fund. And before I hand it over, I wanted to mention just a few things. The reason we started this was the last time that we raised the water rates was back in 2005. And since that time, water rates have increased significantly. Just this month, September 1st, the Metropolitan Water District increased their water rates by 20%. It's anticipated that they'll increase their rates again in January of 2011 by another 22%. Combined with the lack of rainfall, we've been more dependent on this more expensive water by the reduced capacity from our groundwater system. So we saw the need that to balance the budget, we needed to borrow $3.5 million from our reserve account just to balance the budget this year. And so we saw the need to do a comprehensive rate analysis. Proposition 218 under the California Constitution does require us to analyze our revenues, expenditures, and look at our operation and maintenance costs, what we pay for water, and do a comprehensive financial plan prior to raising the rates. So this evening I brought up Paul. He can go over, the plan is completed, and we have a little PowerPoint presentation that we can briefly go over the report that we have presented to you. But this evening we will be asking you to approve the water utility financial plan. We'll need to set a public hearing of November 10th. This is the 45-day period that the public would have the opportunity to submit protests to the rate increase. And also direct staff to send out that notice that we have drafted for you, and it was attached to the staff report. So with that, I'll hand this over to Paul, and I'll be happy to answer any detailed questions about the financial plan.
Isn't technology great? Thank you. Very well, Mayor, Council, thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the utility financial plan. I want to first start talking about the reasons behind the required rate adjustment that we're looking at. There are four principal reasons. The first is that periodically rates need to be adjusted. The last rate increase was in 2005, so we have a need just to keep up with the inflation over time. Operating expenses have increased about 6% annually over the last 4 years. Major drivers there are chemicals and power. And through 2009 through 2014, we have an estimated CIP of $13.9 million. In addition to that, and probably the most important part, is the increase in purchased water. Imported water, which you get from MoDOC through Metropolitan Water District, Southern California, the rates have increased 29% since the last rate study was done, and just this month, they're going up another 20%. So we've seen a significant increase in the imported water. Groundwater has gone up by 38%. But even more important than that is because the pumping percentages have changed, the city is now required to buy more water, imported water, which is more expensive. And this has led to an increase in your purchased water cost. So in a sense, we're buying more water that is imported that is going up at a higher rate. Any questions about this? We looked at other aspects of your O&M cost over time. And as you can see, this is our projection of costs going out in the future. For your purchased water, your imported water from MoDOC, going up from about $3.35 million per year to $7.1 million by 2014. Rather significant increases. When we look at the current financial outlook, if we take these assumptions on future expenditures and we keep the revenues constant, you see there the dark line that is declining is your deficit. Over time, you will simply not have enough revenue to cover the cost of the utility. And by 2014, we have about a $28 million deficit. Obviously, that is not a sustainable outcome. So the current financial outlook, $2.6 million of loss in this year, fiscal year 2009. Reserves will be exhausted by 2011, and the CIP will not be adequately funded. We worked with the Finance Committee and developed 3 objectives that they wanted to look at. First, draw down the reserves to manage the rate shock. More or less, use the reserves over time to allow the rate increases to go into effect but have less of a jolt on your customers. The second thing was to meet the reserves by the reserve requirement by 2014, which is get your reserves back up to the level that they should be. Increase the fixed charge revenue to improve revenue stability. So you have 2 components to your charge, the volumetric charge and the fixed charge. would increase that to fund the capital improvements. And the last item there is to ensure that the CIP is adequately funded by establishing a dedicated capital charge. With that, we projected cost out into the future. The top line that you see there are your revenues, and you can see the revenues. Does this laser work? Revenues are exceeding the cost by 2011, which allows you to bring the fund balance up, and by 2014, we're meeting the target fund balance. So the line is the target fund balance we have here, the reserve requirements. This is the actual reserves that you have, and by 2014, we have adequate reserves on hand. Also, we looked out past 2014 at the capital improvements plan to make sure that they were adequately funded with the rate increases that we have here. So the proposed financial plan that we're presenting here tonight, the loss is eliminated by 2011. Target reserves are met by 2014, and the CIP is adequately funded beyond the 5-year financial planning period. This results in the rates that we are presenting here over time. The commodity rate is what's shown on the top, which is charged per 100 cubic foot of water consumed. And we also have an increase in the fixed monthly charge, which includes that capital charge to adequately fund the capital improvements plan. We also looked at the impact on your customer bills. Now, this graphic can be somewhat of a confusing graphic. Essentially, what we're looking at here are the percentage of your customers that have various bill impacts. This curve here shows a cumulative percentage up to 100% of your customers. And we can see here that about 50% of your customers will have a bill impact of $8 or less per month. Less than 1% will have an impact greater than $40 per month, and those are primarily the larger meters that will be impacted by the capital charge.
Excuse me, is this calculation is inclusive of all the aspects here, the capital charge,
yes,
the line size charge, as well as the usage charge?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All in. We then compared you to some of your neighboring communities. And for the typical customer here, we used 1,800 cubic feet of water per month with a 3/4 inch meter. Everyone up here, with the exception of the Newport Beach proposed and Mesa consolidated, are their existing rates, which all these cities and districts are going to be forced to look at their revenues as well. They're being hit by the same rate increases from MODOC, so their rates are likely to change in the future. Irvine Ranch has a different way of assessing their rates, a different charge mechanism. For them, we assumed 3 people per household and 3,000 square foot lot size. So a little bit hard to compare them, but everyone else you can see the impact. But again, these are, with the exception of Mesa and the Newport Beach proposed, their existing rates. And again, all these communities are going to be facing the same kind of cost pressure that you are. With that, I'd like to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions? Councilman Gardner?
I had a comment on the notice that you propose to send out, which has some of these fees. Most of them are modest, but you get to the bottom couple lines, and it's just like, oh my God, they're huge. And if you asked me, I could not tell you where I fall. I mean, I'm assuming I don't fall in the 12-inch with my home, but it might be good to indicate in some way residential as opposed to commercial or something for the person who's looking at this and suddenly is just terrified that their bill is going to go up 400 times what it was or something.
And you're correct. Most residential do have the 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. We see the occasional 1-inch meter. Interesting enough, we had to list that per Prop 218, the actual charge per meter size. The city does own a 12-inch meter. It's owned by the utilities department, and we don't pay it.
Okay, but if we could just indicate where the residential
Right.
for most people, I think that would be.
To be a little clearer about
Yeah.
it. Correct. So that's why. It also includes the capital charge. And then as a request, I believe Councilmember Daigle asked before about how we compared with how we established that, the charge for the meter capacity. We actually have some slides on that too. Let's talk to that. Do you have that one slide?
You bet. You're talking about the slide on the equivalency factors?
Yeah, the equivalency factors. And how we achieve that. It looks huge. Historically, historically, it's been pretty equal between a 3/4 inch meter and an 8-inch meter or 6-inch. And here in Newport, we thought that that was fairly normal. The little chart.
Oh, so, I'm sorry.
It's right there. This chart actually shows where Newport Beach is currently, and this is on the very far left is what we currently charge from a 3/4 inch meter to a larger meter. You can see that there's not much price difference between the sizes. When we compare that to other cities, Red Oak did a great job of researching how do other agencies charge for that size of meter, and you can see there's a drastic difference. And I think that we were used to in Newport seeing that slight charge between a 3/4, 1 inch, or 1.5 inches, just a slight difference in monthly fee. When we compare that, the Newport Beach proposed is the second from the left. That's our new proposed structure for the differences in costs. I thought this was really good research from them, and it shows that we're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but it made sense of why we charge more and how much compared to other cities.
I might want to add one thing to that. As you recover more of your capital costs for the CIP and those fixed monthly charges, it's important that the larger meter sizes pay their pro rata share of that, and that's why moving to a new equivalency schedule for those meters is important.
Do you do studies for other agencies?
Certainly. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to ask your perspective on something. I've had no less than 25 conversations about it with Councilman Webb, so I'm looking for some fresh input. And that is, when I look at this, people turn on their tap, they get water, they don't really care much beyond that. And so what you have to look at is the delivery system and the cost of that delivery system. And I have my water bill. It's most recent $36.88 a month. And then someone I know in Santa Ana Heights who has IRWD, their bill was $8.19. What accounts for those differences? I mean, here we're both delivering water. Do other systems have a more cost-effective delivery system? They're already in our community in Santa Ana Heights and Newport Coast, and is that something that we ought to consider to have them expand their footprint? If you could address that issue, I'd appreciate it.
You bet. The cost of delivering water can vary substantially depending on the kind of water and the sources that you have. But I think in the example that you have there, it may be a little bit of an apples and oranges. Some agencies actually use property taxes. They have investment income, a large amount of money in the bank that they earn interest on, and that's used to keep their rates relatively low. And so in that example, you can have a situation where one community really shows a much lower rate, a much lower bill, but the total cost may not be that much different. I'd have to look at the specifics of the bill that you're talking about, but you can see significant averages. I know a community south of here in Orange County that gets about half of its costs are covered through property taxes. Well, that means everything else being equal, they can charge half as much and still spend the same amount. So it's very difficult to compare. I don't know the specifics that you're talking about.
Okay, so let's say, for example, that part of IRW's ability to deliver lower rates is because of their investment income. So that would be very real that the rates could potentially be less then.
That's correct. Okay. Investment income and property taxes combined could keep the rates low, but yet the cost of delivering the services might still be higher than or the same that you're facing here.
I can't help myself. I need to add on it because it's been with me for 10 years and it's still gnawing at me, and Dave knows what I'm going to say, that IRWD gets more in property tax for Newport Coast than the city of Newport Beach does.
But for the citizen, though, they still pay the same amount in tax.
Yes.
They don't pay any more or any less, but they're getting a lower water bill. It's the agency that's taking the hit.
Well, you could say that the customer is paying the same amount of property tax, but more of their money is going to water, to IRWD, than it would be, any of our other residents.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Henn?
Yeah, I noticed a change here from, I think it's a change from the last Finance Committee discussion we had, wherein there was some discussion about some sort of a borrowing mechanism from operating reserves to fund the capital needs. But it looks like you've restructured the timing and amount of your capital needs such that this sort of inter-fund loan within the city is not necessary?
Yeah, do you want to address that?
And was that solved because you've increased the capital charge, or tell me how you did that again?
Well, actually, and Sean could probably give me some detail on the model, how we did that. But initially, you were right. We thought that if we would use debt issuance to put money into our reserve, we could fund some capital ahead of time. What we found is that with the interest that we would need to pay on that loan, in the end, in 5 years, the actual rate would be higher. I gave a slight example, I believe, in my staff report. But so we're proposing, which is different, you are right. We initially had thought, well, how are we going to reduce the rate shock? How are we going to, instead of recovering all our funds in the first year, there are a couple of options. One was to incrementally get to our target over 4 years. 2 was to borrow money from either the general fund or debt issuance into the reserves, and also possibly postpone the capital improvement projects. You heard earlier in the study session that we've established now how much we need for capital improvement. And so we thought, well, we'll run the model both ways. There's a financial model that supports these numbers that you see before you. And let's do it with just cash financing. Leave the reserves low, refill them by 2014, and just see if we can do a pay-as-you-go. So by adjusting the fixed fee, they are higher initially by a few cents. I think it's 208 goes to 214. So it's a little bit higher than we would save some money if we borrowed it, but they're a couple of cents higher. But in the end, in 5 years, it's something like 30 cents lower.
And you didn't defer the timing of necessary capital. That hasn't changed.
No, nothing has changed.
The capital improvements that you're actually going to execute.
But, George, didn't something change as far as the Balboa Island Underground Assessment District not passing, and we thought that we were going to need a sizable amount of money in order to replace pipe?
That is correct. I think when we started this talk back in February of 2008, it was fully assumed that we would have to invest $2.5 to $3 million in Balboa Island to do all of the water mains. Since we've had to postpone that, but that was just a natural occurrence. So we haven't had to invest that this year. You're right. It might have been a little different story had we had to invest in that. So good point.
Two other comments. George, first off, I think you've done a fabulous job navigating this whole issue over the past, I've just been aware of 3 or 4 months. I'm sure you've been working on it a long time. There's a lot of moving parts here to try and come to grips with. Red Oak's done a good job in support of this as well, but I really commend you. I mean, you've been in the saddle here not all that long as the senior decision maker, and you've really done a nice job. The only other thing I would recommend is that we actually have a reserve policy for the water enterprise and wastewater funds, a stated policy that addresses the various issues associated with how we establish our target reserve, and when we get there, how we're going to maintain it. If we have an overage, what do we do? If we have a shortfall, what do we do? Similar to how we've done our other internal reserves. So I don't think we have one quite now that matches this plan. Is that right, Dan?
Yes. At the time when we looked at all of our reserves, we thought it was premature to come out with that policy. Right. The initial one we had contemplated, we were having some difficulty melding that with a financial plan, and we didn't want to come out prematurely. We have a direction that we're recommending in the staff report of what we'd like to see, which is basically on the reserve side, 50% of as an operating reserve that would give us a 25% loss rate for 2 years to make a restructuring, or 6 months worth of operation on the operating side. On the capital side, we're looking at it's difficult to make an assessment without doing that full criticality assessment of how much should you have in reserve in the event of a catastrophic loss. Right now, we're saying about 1 year's, absent that criticality assessment, we're contemplating a reserve policy that says essentially about 1 year's worth of capital contributions to the policy in reserve, so that you could do your normal contributions, plus you'd have roughly 1 year's or somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 to $4 million in reserve for doing emergency repairs. We know if it was a very big disaster, we would also anticipate receiving some FEMA. We're open to expanding that, but our initial goal was stopping the bleeding in terms of operations. Now that we've gotten to this point, we will come back to you with a separate adjustment to the reserve policy to evaluate options and
Yeah, I'd like to have another, maybe we can do that at the Finance Committee level to start with, and I'd like to have another chance to have a discussion about that. In total, the targeted reserves we've got here are pretty sizable by the time we get out to 2014. And if the cost of a criticality assessment isn't very large, it might well be worth doing one to be sure that we're not over-reserving here against the real exposures, that's all. So.
Absolutely. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
Well, George, I also would like to commend you and your staff and our consultants for the work that you've done. It's never an easy thing to come and recommend raising water rates, but I think you've done a very good job in pointing out that these rates are now almost 5 years old without an adjustment, that the cost of the water that we have to purchase is now going up by almost 60%. And we saw in the study session the importance and the critical need of replacing the water infrastructure that we have. And anybody who's not convinced of that only needs to look at what happened in Los Angeles this last week at the mess up on Coldwater Canyon to see what happens when you defer those types of investments. So I think this is a good plan, well put together, and I commend you for it.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I'd just like to make a motion to approve the water utility financial plan, set a public hearing on the rate increase, and to have the staff send the notices out.
Councilwoman Davis?
I think, as our accounting manager pointed out, we will be deficit spending if we don't raise these rates, and that's not responsible. So that's, in my view, what's driving this. But I think as we move forward, if there are systems out there that can deliver water less expensively, then we owe it to our ratepayers to start to look at that as well. So,
Councilman Webb?
I don't agree with the last part of her statement as far as that's concerned. I think that we need to run things as economically as possible, but I'm not interested in looking at some of the organizations that have been pointed out recently.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public want to comment on this? Okay, seeing no one, there's no further comment. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Motion for reconsideration. A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Okay, is there any motions for reconsideration? Okay, seeing none, I'd just like to make one final comment as we adjourn here. For a lot of the reasons that were stated earlier, Homer, we're going to miss you. But many ways you won't be missed just because of the strength of the organization you built. And so tonight the curtain's going to come down on your career here with the city, but it also rises on Dave, and I think it's a testimony to the organization that you built and the staff and the people that are here that I believe it's going to be a seamless transition, and that although we'll miss you and it's sad from that standpoint, it's really exciting to see what happens as that curtain opens on Dave and how he moves us ahead in the future. So with that,
Thanks for giving us 10 years.
I'm sure you're looking forward to handing your to-do list over to Dave.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.